we go. So, this is our last proper class, so to speak. Next week, we're going to be doing a big fat review session in preparation for the exam, which is the following week. Just a reminder, the exam also allows you to have a double-sided 8.5 by 11 crib sheet. You'll find the exam to be reasonably similar to the midterm in many respects. Because you've had the midterm, you've seen an example of like my style of test, which is fairly different from the Java test, right? The Java test has a particular style and flavor to it. So yeah, you can expect things to be kind of more of the same in that respect. The exam will of course be a bit longer because it's an exam. It will cover more topics in a bit more detail than the midterm because it's an exam. But you also have 3 hours to work on it, but I think I gave you 3 hours for the other one, even though you didn't really need it and most people left in 2. So, any questions about the exam? We are all aware of the day upon which the exam is taking place. Is it the Friday for this and Java is the Tuesday? Both at 9 a.m., I believe. Both on the second floor of A Wing as well, I believe, yeah. I posted an announcement of it, of those details, so, yes. Okay, all right, everyone's going to get 100% then. It's a bit early to get into like what the coverage is and what the particular topics are. I'll save that for the review session next week. Today, we are going to continue on and polish off the Ajax topic. I'm also going to introduce assignment 5 for you. Assignment 5 is not all that difficult, relatively speaking. If I were to compare it to one other assignment that you've written this semester, it probably bears most similarity to assignment 3 in terms of length and difficulty. So hopefully that's, hopefully you're like, oh, thank you. Depending on how much you put into assignment 4, that could have been quite a lot of effort. Truthfully, I have not yet had the opportunity to grade assignment 4 or look at them. I'll probably be doing that Monday, as tomorrow I'm finalizing your exam, send that off to the printers. I'll do some grading of assignment 4 if I have some time left over. Then the weekend, the long weekend. Then Monday I should have some time to take a look at them. But yeah. Any questions about the timeline? Shall we get to it then? Very good, very good. So, if you could please open up Putty, we will get underway. We're going to be working on the server again today. Here we go. that point, it's even better just to not have to even have it. Except that doesn't work at all. Oh my goodness. Does anybody have like a blank piece of paper?
Like if it's not.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. This is the impromptu mouse pad. Although, you know. We might get extra durability if we fold it in half. Nice first thing. Yeah, that's marginally better. So let me just increase the font for the benefit of people who are in the back. Is this font readable? So please log in using your hostname csunix.mohawkcollege.ca. Open her up. There we go. Log in as Moore, not Moose. Moore. Come on. There we go. So, I'll just give you folks a moment. How many people are logged in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what? I can just see who is logged in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ha! There you go. The W command shows you all of the people who are currently logged in. And by the way, you can also you can use W to send messages to other users. But at least I think it's W. But that's fine. So let's take a look at where we left off last time around. Please navigate to public HTML. For this class, I had put our work in the directory winter 2026-2. CD is change directory, ls is list contents of working directory. There we go. By the way, Linux is an employable skill. It's a good thing to know. Would you like to know why Linux is an employable skill? It's because, thank you for asking, it's because when you're in a bash prompt, you can take a sequence of bash commands and create a program from it, execute that program, and it executes a series of bash commands. This is called bash scripting. It's extremely powerful. Like, you guys feel like you have a pretty good handle on Java, right? You know how to write a Java program? You could write a Java program that takes some input and does some output, right? Scripting is writing a program that uses other programs and links them together, right? So it's like, sure, you wrote a little Java program, but like, who's going to use it? What's it good for, right? The answer to that question could be, I made it for the purpose of this bash script that I have been writing, because it does something like more efficiently that I can't quite do with bash. Although once you get into bash scripting, you'll find that most things you need to do, there are programs for. It's just a matter of hooking them together. But yes. So, let's take a quick look. Nano ajax.js. This is our JavaScript file as we were working on it last time. Let's review our basic Ajax syntax. Lots of X's in that sentence. So, an Ajax request is initialized in JavaScript using the fetch function. These are also sometimes called fetch requests. Fetch requests will target a remote resource. This will be a file of some form or another, at least so far. When you get into web APIs, this changes a little bit, but the basic mechanism remains in place. The fetch returns a promise, which is to say a data object which will be fulfilled when the network communication is finished. The then method is a way of chaining additional actions when the first one is finished or hears back. So the first of these takes our response packet and breaks the text content of that response packet out of the packet. The second is a callback function. Once this is broken out, we pass it into this function, call it data. We can then work with it. This is the callback function. So the very important point here is that Ajax is asynchronous communication. What's the difference between synchronous and asynchronous communication? Ooh, that would be a good test question. What's the difference between synchronous and asynchronous? Anybody? Yes?
Isn't synchronous kind of like, it's not independent, it's like working with something else, while asynchronous is completely independent?
It's not, pardon me. It's not whether it's working with something else. So, let's play a little etymology game, shall we? Right. So, what does chronos mean? Time. What does that mean? Sync.
Like happens at the same time?
Yes. So, synchronous means like so sync means like in conjunction with, right? So synchronous means two things, or maybe multiple things at the same time. What does the A prefix mean?
Does it mean the opposite?
Yeah, it means not. For example, do you know the difference between someone who is illiterate and alliterate?
Illiterate means they're not literate at all, and illiterate means nothing.
So, most people in our society can read. They are literate in some sense. Very few of us are illiterate. However, the overwhelming majority of the population is alliterate, which means they choose not to read most of the time. Right? So it's like, you know, can I think of any other examples of A as a prefix? Aseptic, which means basically the same thing as antiseptic. Septic meaning gross and dirty, right? That's why you have a septic tank to hold poop, because poop is gross and dirty. But anyway, so when you say A, that means multiple things are happening, but not at the same time, right? That's what asynchronous means. So, asynchronous communication, in practical terms, means that we are using an event system to handle communication, right? So, AJAX requests transport data over the network in capitals, possibly reverently, the network, right? How long does it take a packet to travel through the network?
Isn't it in the milliseconds?
Sometimes, most of the time, not always. It's a bit of a trick question. The fact is, and the important thing is, there's no fixed time it takes for something to travel through the network, right? It might take, if the thing you're communicating with is like inside of the same local area network, maybe it takes, a few microseconds for that communication to take place. If you're communicating with a server in, Mogadishu or Taiwan or something, right? It's a little bit further from here, so it takes longer for the packet to travel, even though most of the, in theory it shouldn't, right? Because most of these cables that are transporting this data are fiber optic, which, you know what it means to be a fiber optic cable? What does it mean?
Isn't it like a glass cable that uses light instead of like regular cable instead of like electricity uses light? Right?
Yes. So instead of transporting the data via electrons, we're transporting it via photons. Much faster, right? Speed of light is really fast. Light travels from one end of this earth to the other extraordinarily quickly. The time is not spent in the actual transit of photons along the cable. The time is spent in the processing of the packet by individual nodes in the network, right? But basically, basic law of the universe, the further something has to travel, the more time it's going to take to get there, if you hold the speed constant. So, there is no fixed amount of time that network communication takes, and that time is unbounded. It could take a very long time. And you don't want to like sleep the thread while you're waiting to hear back from the network, right? I know a lot of people like this is a thing they teach you in Python, right? But I kind of wish they wouldn't, because in practical terms, you almost never like put a program to sleep. It's not really a practical sort of thing to do. Normally you want things to happen as quickly as possible. So how does this system solve this problem? It sends the packet out, then it registers the callback function for when the packet is returned as a response packet. When that packet is received, we execute the callback function, but it's asynchronous, right? This is an important concept. We need to break you out of, like if you're going to program in JavaScript, we need to break you out of this idea of programs always being sequential executions. If I send 2 AJAX requests, one immediately after the other, most of the time I'll get those back in the order I sent them, but not every time, right? Sometimes I'll get the second one back first and the first one back second. Your program has to account for this, right? You cannot rely on the callback functions being executed in a particular order. Does that make sense? Am I making some good sense? All right. So, AJAX. I have a couple of items on the agenda today. Number one, I need to show you how to read and handle JSON that has been sent to you from the server. What does JSON stand for again? What's the J stand for?
Java.
Java. S is?
Script.
Script. How about that O?
O.
No. OB. OBJ.
Object.
Object. N. NO.
Notation.
Notation. There we go. JavaScript object notation. JSON. It is not optional to know how JSON works, right? So, question.
Sorry, I came like a little bit late. Is there anything before this example that you were doing?
No, this is just the stuff from yesterday. I was just I was reviewing what the fetch request syntax is and what it's doing.
Okay. And you said fetch grabs whatever we place inside and then executes upon that, was it?
So it goes to the server, requests this file.
Yep.
This tells us how to interpret it. In this case, we're interpreting it as regular text string. Then this is the callback function which executes once we've received that data. So, in order to get some JSON data from the server, let's put some JSON data on the server. Fruits.json. Now, this will be an object. Somebody name for me a fruit.
A mango.
Mango. Very good. Did you know there are over 20,000 different individual varieties of mango? Fruit.
Peach.
Peach. Notable local agricultural product. If you've never been to the Winona Peach Festival, I recommend it. Give me a fruit. Surely there are more types of fruit than just mangoes and peaches.
Orange.
Orange, very good. We're breaking into citrus. Give me another.
Pear.
Pear, there we go. I have it on good authority from a child of apple farmers that pears are actually quite a bit more nutritious for you than apples. Fruit! We're not quite done yet.
Pomegranate.
Pomegranate. Did you know that in ancient depictions, or perhaps medieval depictions, the pomegranate was the original fruit that was thought to be the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil from the Garden of Eden? This only later became the apple. The pomegranate was the original one. And man, I kind of sympathize with that because that is one tricky fruit. Give me a fruit! It's fruit facts time.
Apple.
Kiwi. I don't really have anything to say about kiwis. Apples. Do I have any apple facts? Have you guys ever seen the Big Apple? That's a thing in Ontario. Yeah, in Colburn. There we go. There's a big apple in Colburn. You can go inside of it. There you go. The Americans think they have a big apple, but is their apple as big as that? I ask you that. Alright, give me a couple more fruit.
Dragon fruit.
Dragon fruit. That's I don't know, I almost want to call it like a popular new meme fruit, you know? Like it's kind of like how axolotls are the new meme animal, you know? Dragon fruit are the new meme fruit. One more.
Grapes.
Grapes? Yeah. Grapes. I don't really know if I have anything to say about grapes, except that perhaps grape flavor is one of the better artificial flavors, in my opinion. No? Disagree? What's the better artificial fruit flavor?
Pretty much anything.
Pretty much everything except grapes. Ah, we have a difference of opinion.
Well, maybe bananas are worse. But
What about lemon? Oh yeah, banana's pretty awful. But I hate bananas generally. Alright. Bananas, you are not good enough for my list. Alright, I got one for you. Controversial. But it's true. Pumpkins are a fruit, though most people consider them a vegetable. Do you know what is the botanical definition of a fruit? You know it.
Anything with seed.
Yep, it's got to have seeds. So if it has seeds, it's a fruit. Alright, so we have some fruit-related data now on the server. Our object is to load this data into our web page. So, let's write a new request. This one's just going to be annoying, so I'll just disable the one that was occurring at regular intervals. Let's write a new request, function request3. Fetch fruits.json. So, some of you may have anticipated me on this point. In order to interpret the contents of a packet as JSON data rather than as text, we use .json here instead of .text. This will parse the packet for us. Of course, if the data is not formatted as JSON, or it's poorly formatted, or your stupid PHP script inserted an error into something that was supposed to be JSON, therefore breaking the formatting, PHP, then this will fail. But most of the time this should be fine. This is fine unless an error occurs, and if an error occurs, you should probably fix the error. So, function data, there we go. Whenever you are establishing communication between computers, it is my very strong recommendation that before you go on and write the rest of your program, you check to make sure the communication is occurring correctly. You try passing around some hello worlds. You try logging some things to console. Console.log data. There we go. So, in practical terms, would you like to guess how many lines of code I usually write before I test it? Like when I'm working on my own personal stuff. Yes?
Wasn't it 6?
6 is getting a bit long, actually. Normally, 3 to 4, maybe 5, right? In this case, we've got 5, but you know, maybe you don't count like the function declaration. I normally don't count like, you know, the closing braces, right? So really we've got like 4 good chunky lines of code to test, right? Test early, test often. So, loading this up on CS Unix, csunix.mohawk college, hawkcollege.ca/ maybe, okay, alright. Maybe we should like improve the phonetics of the college's name. Do we really need to say Mohawk College? Or could we just say Mohawk College? Right? Take care of the adjacent K sounds. Alright. In my case, my username is Moore. Your username will be the one that you use instead there. I put this in winter 2026-2. There we go. I'll blow that up for you. There you go. This is my URL. Substitute that for your student account number. And this for the folder you put everything in. Executing request 3. Note that this is the normal way that the JavaScript console outputs objects with this kind of arrow hierarchy view. That's how you can tell that the thing has been correctly interpreted as a data structure. And look! There's our data. Huzzah!
Is there a reason you used intervals of 5?
No, I just needed some data. It's something I could come up with in my head relatively quickly. as a matter of fact, any of these fields, any of these values, could be any of the following things. You can have in there integers, floats, strings, they just have to be literals, booleans, right? Our standard set, plus, you can also put lists in there, plus you can put other objects in there. These things are often nested hierarchically. So, alright. Would you like me to explain what this thing is? It's a little bit strange. Prototype object. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Is it like something like a class, but since it's JSON, you can't really tell?
You're like 30% there. So Java is a class-based language. It does class-based object-oriented. Yes?
Is that in alphabetical order?
It is in alphabetical order. Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
It messed up our order. But this emphasizes a very important point. Objects do not have an ordering on their members, right? Lists are ordered. They have to be because you use numbers to access them. The properties of objects, not ordered. So the computer will rearrange them at will. Now, when you loop over these things, you'll get them in the order they were in the file, right? But you shouldn't think of an object as having any kind of implicit ordering between its members. Okay? So, where was I? Yes, this thing. So Java is a class-based language that uses class-based object-oriented programming. JavaScript is an object-based language that uses object-based object-oriented programming. And you may be thinking to yourself, object-based object-oriented programming sounds more like object-oriented programming than class-based. But it's awful and bad, and you should prefer Java if you have, if you have any sense, you'll prefer Java. Basically, this is how it does inheritance. You take the prototype and you set the prototype to some other class, and or some other object, and that means that this object inherits from that object. So it can access the properties of its prototype in the same way that like a Java subclass can access the superclass's properties. But you gotta do it manually and each time, right? Yes.
So like, in our recent Java thing, we had like, I'll call it a grandparent class, then a parent class, then a superclass. You'd have to do all three.
Yes. So I don't have, it's kind of a whole lecture in and of itself, this whole business. But as a matter of fact, and there's a very, very short amount of material about this in the week 2 modules currently published.
Okay.
But JavaScript supports 3 different ways of doing object-oriented programming. So you have prototypical object-oriented programming, which is you just do what I said. You take this property and you assign it to what object you want to make the prototype. You have pseudo-classical object-oriented programming, which is basically the first one, but you're trying to make a constructor function, right? But it's weird because In Java, the constructor is like inside the class, right? Because classes. In JavaScript, the class definition is considered to be the constructor function, which is just a function. It just happens to create an object. That's how constructors work in JavaScript. Then the final one is like proper Java style class-based syntax. Like you can like declare classes in something that looks like regular Java notation. That looks a bit like this, right? Give me a longer example, please. Yeah, there you this is something you might recognize as being a bit more similar to the way Java does things. However, all this is syntactic sugar for the pseudo-classical object-oriented programming. So under the hood, nothing has changed. It's still object-based, object-oriented programming where objects have a prototype and they inherit from the properties of their prototype. But, you know, it's awful. Yes?
How come the methods don't require the function prefix?
Well, this is JavaScript, so functions don't have a return type. They just return whatever.
Oh, I just meant like the function prefix before
Oh.
the actual method.
Because it's in a class, so we know it's a function.
Okay.
You'll notice also that rather than, like, we're not explicitly declaring our instance variables either, we're just kind of using them, right? And don't ask me what yield does, that is well beyond the scope of this tangent. Although, yield is usually like one of those keywords that if I see it in an assignment, it's like, this is coming pretty close to a plagiarism case. Because, you know, we don't teach it and it's like a long way from anybody knowing how to use it. Unless, you know, except in particular cases where people actually do know how to use it. But, yeah. You'll also notice that, like, is like encapsulation touched at any point in this example? Have we declared anything public or private? No. That's another sort of kettle of fish. Yeah, the concept of privacy is just kind of like, there are ways to do it, but that's also well beyond the scope of this tangent. So yeah, yes.
This is more about JavaScript. If it has so many problems, why is this the most standard thing we use?
Nobody expected the internet to be this popular. I mean, that's like the kind of the real actual answer. So on a web page, the way that it's set up, JavaScript is literally the only scripting language that you can use, right? You may ask yourself, well, why wouldn't we introduce more different types of programming languages? And the answer is like, well, JavaScript will do anything you want it to, even though it's awful, right? It's kind of like, you know, it's another one of these like kind of QWERTY keyboard problems, you know? It's like, I don't know who came up with the layout for a QWERTY keyboard, but like, it's suboptimal, right? Like, you guys know what a Dvorak keyboard is? Let me show you something. I don't think it has anything to do with the composer. So this is a Dvorak keyboard, right? You'll notice all the buttons have been rearranged, right? So the question is, which fingers on your hand are most dexterous? It's these ones, right? The Dvorak keyboard takes the most frequently used letters in the English language, it's designed for English, and it groups them here, right? Or on the home row. But less frequently used letters, such as Z and Q and J and B, these are pushed to the periphery. Still certainly readily available, but you know, the intention of the Dvorak keyboard is to minimize your travel time for your fingers as you're typing. Of course, you know, I don't know, in recent years I've found that like elementary schools and high schools, I don't know where they train you on keyboards, but it seems like people are better trained on keyboards recently than they have been historically. How many people learned, like, when I was going to school, like literally 100 million years ago on the back of a brontosaurus, they called it touch typing, right? And they did exercises where they'd have a piece of like foam taped to the keyboard where they'd fold that over your keyboard, you'd put your hands inside so you couldn't see the keys, and then you did typing exercises, and that's how you learned how to touch type, right? That is a very effective way to learn how to type, because the whole problem with typing is if you're looking at your keyboard, you are behaving deeply suboptimally, right? You should be able to use a keyboard without looking at it, right? If you want to have a really good typing speed. But this is kind of like back in the era where, like, you know, it's kind of a holdover from the era when a secretary would be hired for a typing pool based on like typing speed tests, right? Like that was like a relevant employment metric. Was like, oh well, you know, you say that you'd like to work in our typing. Wait, let me do the 1950s. Like, you say that you want to work in our typing pool, but what's your word speed? Eh? What's your typing speed? Well, about 30 words per minute. It's like, oh, come on. Our top typist does 120, and you try to get into our typing pool with 30 words per minute. Go over to a competition. They maybe want you, eh? And, you know, because basically, in the olden times, they used women as Xerox machines, and that was how companies worked. Probably a suboptimal use of half of the population, but you needed things typed, and you know, people got paid to do it. So, you know, not a bad gig, probably. Yes?
What's Xerox?
It's the company that makes photocopiers, or at least the company that developed the photocopier. Good God, alright. Fine, you made me feel old, congratulations. But anyway, so the question is, if the Dvorak keyboard is so far superior to the QWERTY keyboard, why don't we use them? Why is the keyboard in front of you right now a QWERTY keyboard and not a Xerox? Not a Dvorak. And the answer is, this was good enough, right? For most people, because they were trained on QWERTY keyboards, the amount of time that it would take you to retrain yourself for a Dvorak keyboard, presuming you were trained properly for a QWERTY keyboard in the first place. If you're hunting and pecking, then it doesn't matter what keyboard you're using, because you're having to look at the keys to type anyways. If you're trained for a QWERTY keyboard, converting yourself over to this one is a sufficient amount of time investment that it's not normally worth the marginal gain in productivity. So, most people just use a QWERTY keyboard. Plus, it's like, you know, if you sit down to any, like if you were to sit down to a computer and it had one of these instead of one of these, you'd be like, what on earth is, somebody get me a proper non-garbage keyboard, please. So yeah, that is basically why JavaScript, right? It was good enough to solve the problem, so it persisted. It is actually like a reasonable amount of trouble to get a browser to interpret any other language. So it wasn't worth the effort at any point. Although JavaScript has historically been terrible for the majority of its existence, things are moving in the direction of JavaScript being much better than it used to be. The ECMAScript standard, which is the standard that all JavaScript must be compliant with, has gradually been introducing better operation modes. Like, although this is not as good as Java, it's certainly an improvement over what had come before, right? And when was this? MDN is pretty good because it'll tell you when things were put in. So this was put in 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago doesn't, that sounds like a long time. It's kind of simultaneously a long time and not a long time, you know? It's long enough that everybody should know that it does this, but it's also short enough that most of the code that you'll work with practically probably doesn't use it. Right? But the V8 engine for JavaScript is like Google has been working that thing for over a decade to try to optimize it down to the point where JavaScript is quasi-functional, and they've had a great deal of success with it. The only reason Node exists is because of all the work that Google's done on the V8 engine, right? Further, what was I going to say? Something about, yeah. Further, let me just lay this on you briefly. Always a good idea to keep on top of the Stack Overflow Developer Survey. The new one comes out in August, I think, for 2026. I just wanna lay this on you for just a moment. Professional coders, all right? All respondents, professional coders. JavaScript is the most popular language. These two are not programming languages. Python is the second proper programming language. Bash, I've talked about Bash already today. Does anybody know what TypeScript is?
Isn't there like a slightly improved JavaScript?
Yeah, it's basically JavaScript, but it has a type system, solving most of the problems that we've been talking about, because basically 80% of the problems with JavaScript come down to the fact that its type system is awful, right? TypeScript solves those problems. TypeScript compiles to JavaScript, right? So basically, if JavaScript is at just about 70% and TypeScript is just about 50%, that means that, in terms of professional developers, 5 out of 7 people are using TypeScript. So that's what's happened to JavaScript. However, from our perspective in this program, you still do need to know vanilla JavaScript. That's without frameworks or anything like that, right? That's what we're teaching in this class is vanilla JavaScript. You still need to know how to use it. We need to get TypeScript into you in some upper year courses, which is what we do, right? You'll get there. But you kind of have to figure out if this is even for you first, you know. A lot of people use this in Java to figure out if this is even for them, right? It's possible 5 or 10 years down the line, this course will no longer teach vanilla JavaScript and will just teach TypeScript. We'll see how things go. But, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Good. So, back, man, this was ostensibly the thing about how to do JSON. Let's actually do that, shall we? So, we have our data. It is JSON formatted. Let's use this to do something. All right, let's create something in the page that displays the data. How about a table? Does a table sound good? Yeah. So first, let's take a look at our HTML page, and let's. Ooh, actually, we already have a div for output, don't we? Let's just use that. So. Let's take the opportunity to review creating elements from JavaScript purely, right? 3 steps to create an element. First, we create the element itself and bind it to a variable. 2, we give that element properties. 3, we bind it to a location in the DOM. So, let table equal document dot create element table. Step 1. The way I like to develop things is I like to do the first thing and the last thing and leave the middle for last, right? That way you never forget to bind the thing at the end. It's like if you ever notice how I'm typing, I'll always put in both and then back my cursor into whatever I'm typing, right? That way you never forget the middle, or sorry, you never forget to close something, right? So document.query selector output dot append child table. Bit of a long line, but there you go. So, normally with a table you have a little bit more of a nicer HTML5 compliant structure with the T head, the T body. I'm going to skip some of the niceties and just jump right to making rows. Alright? So we're going to make some table rows, which means we need to iterate over the data as received. So, let's write a for each loop. Yes.
I don't see any data any entries in data, or is it like a list above?
So, this is a for each loop in the same style as the Java enhanced for loop, right? So, we are creating the variable entry, right? Iterating over data. So, I think this is fairly similar to the Python syntax. So if you have in Python, I think it's if you have list is 1, 2, 3 for element in list, I believe, is the syntax in Python. So it's very, very similar to that.
Okay.
The only difference is we do need to declare like the scope of the variable. Const binds the same way as let, which means it's block scoped to this loop. Which means we don't run into any strange variable shadowing problems. So, let's run this and make sure that it works. There we go. You can see we are printing all of the things. Very good. So, we need to make a table row. Table row is a type of element. Comment those out. Let row equal document dot create element table row. Where are we binding these rows? Where do table rows go? Yes.
In the table?
To the table. Yes, very good. Table dot append child row. There we go. Now we just need to put some stuff into the row. Like a couple of cells. Let cell 1 equal document dot create element td. Let cell 2 equal document dot create element td. We need to bind the cells to the row before we bind the row to the table. Row dot append child cell 1. Row dot append child cell 2. Now we need to just give these cells some properties. Cell 1 dot text content is equal to entry. Cell 2 dot text content is equal to data at entry. Now you may be saying to yourself, but sir, you said you don't write more than 3 or 4 lines of code. Well, these are very similar now, aren't they? Are these really their own lines of code, or is it just the same line of code repeated a couple of times? There's really like 3 or 4 thoughts that are going on, right? Create the things, bind the data, append the cells to the row, append the row to the table, right? So, now, this is about the ugliest basic HTML table in the entire confederation. So, let's give it just a little bit of style. Save, exit, nano index.html. I'm going to do the thing that you're supposed to never do. Do as I say, not as I do. I'm just putting it in a style block up here. Table, td, border, 2 pixels, solid black. There we go. Reload. Execute request. And there, at least now it looks like a table. So there we go. We take data, we iterate over the data, we generate some HTML structures to put the data into, and that's how you work with JSON data. Everything is just sort of increasingly fancy versions of this, right? Social media posts are just fancy versions of this, maybe like, you know, give a div for the post, right? The data may not originate in a JSON file on the server. It may be the results of a database query. Hint, most of the time it's going to be the results of a database query. But this is the essential idea. Once you get this, you have everything that hooks together, and that's good. Any questions? All right. So, shall we talk about your final assignment? Sounds good. The final assignment is due on the final day of class. Oh yes, the Big Apple. Very nice. Come on. I always try to have a password that even if somebody stole it, they wouldn't be able to enter it. So, right. So, this assignment has you make a web page with 3 buttons. Each one of those buttons is linked to an AJAX request. The first one gets some text from a script on the server. The next 2 get some JSON data from a script on the server. This is the script on the server. By accessing the script and not providing any parameters, it gives you this text. This text is then needs to be integrated into your page in the prescribed manner. So, that's fairly easy, almost to the level of a hello world. You make a container which fits across the page. Put the text in. As with many of the assignments for this class, points will be deducted for outrageous ugliness. You must have at least some consideration for how things fit on the page, right? But this comes more into it when we start talking about the second and third buttons. So this is an example of what your output might look like. When you provide query parameter to the script, it provides back a JSON structure with a little bit of data that you are to integrate for button 2 into this kind of image viewing div kind of view. This is actually not a great example because they're supposed to be equally spaced. That's making the request using get. Making the request using post, you end up with this table. The only difference in the data between these two is if you send a get request, you will receive at max 3 entries in the JSON. Here you will receive maximum 15 entries in the JSON. You can just query the script. Choice is equal to, you've got two choices. You've got Mario, which gives you a bunch of Nintendo related information. You also have Star Wars, which gives you some Star Wars related information as well. Man, are there any Star Wars people in the crowd? Yeah, maybe? There are some, like, very obscure Star Wars characters in this data set. I don't know what, like, 70 to 80% of these characters that are in this data set even are. I've watched the movies. I read a couple of the books as a child. I couldn't tell you who most of these guys are. But anyway, I'm more of a Nintendo guy. I could tell you most of the Nintendo characters. I never played Animal Crossing though, so whatever. So, that's kind of the basic idea of it. Does that make sense? Question?
So button 1, we're getting text, putting it on screen from the JSON file, right?
So when you get the JSON file, right? Let's take a look at this data in a bit more depth, right? Let's copy this into Notepad. So if you ignore the slashes, you'll see that you have a list of objects with the following properties, right? This is how the data is formatted, right? Each one of these objects will have a name, a series, and a URL, and this is the same in the case of both Star Wars and Mario, right? You'll see that these are mapped like one-to-one in our example. Where is it? There it is. The name string was put here, the series string was put here, and the URL is used as the source attribute of an image element, and that's what makes the image pop up. Okay?
Where it's one file that we're splitting to show in different places, the different elements of it.
Yes. So, if I refresh this, you'll see I got a few more this time. You'll see I think you probably could if you tried. hopefully that kind of reveals the structure a little bit for you. So basically, overall we have a list. Each entry in this list is an object, right? We then access the properties out of the object. But we're going through each one of these and basically iterating over this list to populate the, You may notice that one of these is a table, right? A table. A table not dissimilar from the table that, we did in class just now. So, similar methods should be used here. Does that make sense? Good. So, a couple of common pitfalls for this one. The idea is, if the button is pressed multiple times, the images here are refreshed. That is to say, the existing ones are deleted and replaced with new ones. Don't just append everything to one big div. There will be substantial deductions for that. Number two, you have to provide a copyright notice under either the table or the images. Well, actually both. You must provide the copyright in both places. And the copyright message must correspond to whether the things are Star Wars or Mario's. Question?
Is there a quick copy paste for that in the assignment? And do we need to update it to the current year?
No. However, when you include your little copyright, this assignment was done by Johnson Schmonson. You have to update that to the current year. Yes. So yeah, points will be awarded for, or points will be deducted if the copyright notice is like the wrong one for the one that you loaded, or in the wrong place, or does not appear at all. There's like a rubric category for the copyright notice. Ostensibly so that we don't get space lasered from orbit by Nintendo's lawyers. So, anything else to say? Ah, yes. So, the value, Mario or Star Wars, that I've been entering here, let me just show you in the URL. Choice, Mario or Star Wars. This value should be selected by the user. There needs to be a form element on the page which allows you to select one of those two somehow. Now it's up to you what sort of form element you're going to use. In the sort of worst and most lazy case, you just make that a text input box. In the much better case, you make that something like a selector, drop down, or radio buttons. You should try to never, ever, forever, never give the user the ability to directly send strings to the server for security reasons, and also what if the user enters Marlo instead of Mario, right? The server rejects that input, and rightly so, but the end user is still frustrated by the fact that the blinky box isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, right? All the colored lights aren't being colored in the exact precise order that the colored lights are supposed to be colored, No matter how many times I slap the monitor, it's not doing what I want. So in the interests of reducing end user frustration, take the opportunity to make spelling mistakes away from them, right? Which means using selector boxes, using radio boxes, that type of thing. Make sense? It's also faster for me when I'm marking, so I'll appreciate it. Any questions? The code for this assignment is probably less than 100 lines. And I already kind of gave you the most difficult part, which is constructing the table. When you construct the table though, please make sure to put the T body and the T head in and structure it in an HTML5 compliant fashion. And also, it would look much better if you use Bootstrap to format the table, because default HTML tables look pretty bad. Question?
You said the example was missing something. Can you repeat what that was?
The example was missing something?
Like the image. Was it about spacing, or was it that there was a third image?
Oh, yes. So it actually states in the assignment instructions that the spacing here should be even, which means this is actually a bad example to put in the assignment, because the spacing isn't even. If we scroll down, even on this one the spacing isn't even. I don't know what's going on. Use the Bootstrap grid system and just allocate the correct number of columns. In fact, if you don't even worry about allocating the number of columns, if you just give it the column class, it'll evenly space it by default, so use Bootstrap. Make it look nice, you know. One way to not make it look nice is to not constrain the size of these images. Some of you received a little bit of feedback about your assignment 3s that was basically to the tune of, why did you make all of these images the wrong, different sizes from each other? This makes it, the interface jump around and it looks horrible. Images, same size. Oops. So, yeah, just make sure that, if I get one, it's not that big, because that's another common problem I see on these things. Okay? Any questions? Okay, I guess it's about middle of class, so we should have our middle of class 15-minute break, which is usually more like 17 minutes, to be honest. Yeah. Let us resume class at 10:42, or thereabouts. Sound good? All right. So be it. So, we need to do post requests. I'm not sure the chalk brushes are actually the best kind of brush for that. So, let's review the difference between a get and a post request. Request method is one of the pieces of information that we send along with the HTTP packet. Now, just because it's a get or a post request doesn't mean we're sending a different type of packet. All get or post boils down to is we're setting one string inside of the header, which is intended to inform the server. It gives the server some information about the packet, right? It's kind of like how file extensions on files kind of in a sense don't really exist. They're only there for the purpose of telling programs what sort of file this is, right? It doesn't really make any difference to the encoding inside of the file. So, considering an HTTP packet, we have the header, we have the payload. Which one is encrypted?
The payload?
The payload. That's right. The payload is encrypted. Is the header encrypted? No, it is not. Get information, get query parameters are stored in the unencrypted header. Because they're unencrypted, anything on the network can see these parameters. So, I ask you, do we send username password combinations using get parameters? Everybody at once? Come on, with enthusiasm.
No.
A little more.
No.
Better. Still not great, but better. Never trust the client and never trust the network. Post parameters are sent in the payload. The fetch requests that we have been executing so far use default values for all of the options that we need to send our data a bit differently. The first thing we need to do is to start setting some options. We can start by setting the request method itself. Now, this is very important. This is very important because I'll be checking for this on the final assignment. If you set the method to post, and you still provide the query string here, you have effectively not set the method to post. This guy is part of the unencrypted header. If you attach your data here, as we did down here, yes, if you attach your data here in this manner, in a post request, you are effectively not sending a post request. You are still providing get data. Does that make sense? So, yes.
So if we do fetch the URL and then nothing in that bracket, it's fine, but if we added anything onto it, it's wrong.
For a post request, yes. This is correct for a get request, but for a post request, you have to attach the data to the payload, not put it in the header. So, let's write a new request. Function request for. There we go. I suppose before we get much further, we'll need a PHP script that. Let's do a fairly simple one. Let's just do one that gives us back all of the data that we sent as post data. So, once you have that, let's create a new PHP script. Let's call it postresponder.php. This will just be a one-liner. We need the opening and closing PHP tags for this to be a PHP script. And now we are going to echo everything that occurs inside of the post superglobal. But unfortunately, we can't just do it like that. We have to JSON encode the post superglobal. In this, if you guys remember from previously, we had $_get, right? That's for get parameters. This one's for post parameters. So, that's all you need. This will simply take whatever we sent to the server and bounce it back immediately to the client again. Okay? So, everybody got that? Thumbs up? Alright. Going back to our JavaScript now. We want to initiate a fetch request for this data. PostResponder.php. Question.
So this is a valid post request as long as you're not concatenating anything to the end of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we've not included the question mark, we're not sending query parameters. Like, if you want to know the truth, you can do both at the same time. But it's unusual. There's nothing preventing you from sending get and post parameters in one request. But we usually draw a line and say post requests do post data, get requests do get data, because otherwise you're kind of not respecting the semantics, right? So let's finish this guy off with the usual stuff. Response.json. And for the time being, we shall be satisfied echoing this data to console. So, the fetch request has a second parameter. The second parameter accepts an object with options. So we provide a second parameter, and it's an object. The first parameter that we're going to provide is method. Method is post. Very good. The default method is get, of course. In order to send it by post, we have to explicitly send it by post. Make sense? So far, so good? Good. So, let's load up request 4. Well, we got something. We got empty. This is probably good, actually. We didn't get an error. Please take a look at your network tab. You'll notice this most recent packet is the packet that we sent via request 4, PostResponder.php. If we click on it, we get to view our header information. You'll see that request method is now post. Whereas, if we take a look at, for example, the request which loaded the JavaScript file in the first place, our request method was get. Status code 200, by the way, is simply the server telling us, yes, this request succeeded. It doesn't necessarily tell you if the data that you received was junk or not, but it tells you that the server did not encounter any errors in issuing it. this is where your 404 is residing. So far so good? Yeah, okay. So let's explore a couple of more options then. A couple more options. So, in order to send data, we send it in the payload. How do we send it in the payload? Well, unfortunately the term is not payload. The term is body. But body and payload are basically the same thing. So the body is always a string. April showers bring May flowers. Sure. Let's refresh this. Send the request again, and see where that data shows up. We're still getting nothing back, but that's not surprising. And I'll show you why. So, our request method is post. If we examine our payload, you can see that what has been sent is the string that we specified. April showers bring May flowers. The response is this empty list, which we've seen previously. Still. So, we are managing to send some data to the server. However, the data is not yet formally a post parameter, right? For one thing, it needs to be a key-value pair, right? So, it is possible to listen for just the message body and echo that back. That's also possible. Man. There you go. I'll show you that one very quickly. So, what was it again? PHP://input with no file extension? Okay. There we go. So, the way that PHP works, it stores the incoming request payload in a file with this address on the server. If we run, so this is a syntax error, but not the one that we. This isn't a problem with the server. Basically, what this is complaining about is the fact that the response from the server is not JSON encoded, which is true. The computer doesn't lie. So if we take a look at our packet, we are sending April showers bring May flowers, and our response is the same. But this is not formatted as a JSON string, right? So it's it's working on it. We can solve that a couple of ways. Probably the easiest is to simply just JSON encode it in the PHP script. And there you go. It's JSON encoded. We get our message back again. Make sense? Question?
Could you go back to the PHP file?
Most certainly. The other thing we could have done was change the encoding on the fetch request to receive string data rather than JSON. You have a question?
Yeah. It's relating to this and the assignment. You said we don't need PHP for the assignment?
That's right. All of this PHP business that I'm doing here, this topic is intended as a linking topic between this and server side. So by doing just a little bit of PHP here, you know, we can get some interesting stuff working. When you're doing client-server communication, I think it's useful to see both the client and the server side of things. So that's why I'm presenting it. But no PHP is required for assignments in this class or on the exam. There's no PHP on the exam. This is just so that I can show you both halves of the communication, because I think that's useful. So, very good. But this is, again, still not encoding as a post parameter. To be a post parameter, we need a key value pair. So, let's see if we can get this one working. So the way that I'm going to teach you to do this, if we return to our Ajax, we're going to encode the body the same way that we encoded our query parameters. We're just going to leave off the question mark. Just like this. We can say text is equal to April showers bring May flowers. We can also say something like name is equal to Dr. Moore. Ampersand separates key value pairs. Right? Very good. But we need one more thing. We need to tell the server that this is how we are encoding the post parameters. So, this is a complicated line. This is the sort of line that you should just put on your cheat sheet. Right? Because it's long and complicated to remember. Yes?
You get a cheat sheet for the exam?
That's the one! So, headers takes another object. We are setting the content type of the packet. That is to say, we are telling the server how the body is being encoded. The form we are using is x-www-form-URL encoded. And if I didn't goof that up too badly, that should work. I'm just going to test it before you all copy it down. Quest 4 is not fine. What? Unexpected. Oh, comma. There we go. undefined, returning blank. Ah, see? I didn't set content type correctly. Man, I was gonna try to impress everybody by just remembering it, but if I have to look it up in class, it should probably be on a cheat sheet. Oh, I forgot the application slash. Yep, that'll do it. It is application slash x dash www dash form dash URL encoded. Blah, what a mouthful. Let me test. Ta-da! There we got our, we have our data returned to us in the form of a JSON structure. And there we go. We have sent post parameters. Choice Mario. Make sense? Any questions? You guys want to see the code again? Yes, sir?
I do have one. It's like very simple. How does it recognize the and without spaces or anything to be and not part of the string?
So, that's a good question. The same way that it recognizes the equal sign to not be part of the string. It's just a reserved character. So, if I wanted to say doctor and Moore, right, I wouldn't be able to use the straight ampersand character. I would have to use the URL encoded version of the ampersand character. You know how sometimes in a URL the space character gets replaced with %20?
Okay.
Similar thing.
It's like in CSS when you're trying to get the copyright symbol for HTML.
Exactly. So it's %26. Let's see if that works. I've never tried this before. We'll see if it works. Ha-ha! There you go. So you just URL encode the special character because like the straight version is reserved for determining these sorts of things. Make sense?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay. So, I'd like to show you how to do something now. It's kind of, it's an important topic, but it's kind of like, it's not on the exam, but you should still know it, you know? It's one of the things that I'm like going to be adding to the course when as I'm doing the rewrite. It's not on the exam. I'd like to cover the async keyword and the await keyword for you. So when I was talking about the event system and how, because this is asynchronous communication, we're essentially launching this network packet out and then not bothering to wait for it to return. We're letting the event system handle calling the callback function, right? That has limitations, right? Let's imagine that for whatever reason, one request depends on the output of another request, right? Now, there are two ways to handle this, right? The sort of classical way of handling this would be to launch a second AJAX request inside of the callback function of the first, right? Which is not fantastic, right? What we want to do in some cases is we want to write something resembling a main method, right? That will perform a sequence of necessary operations, right? Like it might be fine if you're only chaining two of these requests together. Put the second fetch inside of the first's callback. Fine, sure. But the more you do that, the more your code begins to look like spaghetti, right? Suddenly, you apply this for a while, and before you know it, you don't know where your code is coming, where it's going. You don't know what is, calling what. Everything, you have to draw like a diagram of what calls what in order to figure out what order things are happening in. That's just a whole bunch of garbage, right? You don't want that garbage in your code. So let's write a function which executes all of these things in sequence, right? We're trying to synchronize the asynchronous communication. Does that make sense? Yeah? Good? Alright, so there are two keywords that we are going to be using to do this in JavaScript. One is await, and the other is async. So async is a function modifier. You can declare a function as being asynchronous. Await allows you to wait for an asynchronous function to finish before doing the next thing. So, between the two of them, it allows you to key up sequences of requests. So, let's write a function. Even call it main, that's fine. Just to show you the difference. Although these don't depend on each other's outputs, let's see what happens when we run all of our requests together. There we go. So you can see we got, this was this is request 3, then request 4, then we got request 1 and 2. Right? So the order we got things back in was 3, 4, 1, 2, despite the fact that we sent them 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that again. All right, now we're getting, I think this is 1, 3. So the point I'm making is that it comes back in a different order each time, right? And this is probably undesirable. We can, we should probably modify the JavaScript. I think it's request 2 takes a string. There we go. So, if it's important that these things come back in a particular order, we can await the requests. Yes?
Why does request 1 need a wait if it's the beginning one?
Your logic is sound but backwards. It's the last request that we probably don't need the await for, because we don't have anything after request 4 to hold until request 4 until request 4 is finished, right? Request 1. Basically, we're telling the computer wait until request 1 is done before doing request 2, right? So that's the most necessary one. It's the one at the end that's technically unnecessary.
Okay.
So, okay, let's try it. Uh-oh, we're getting an error. Await is only valid in async functions and at the top level of bodies of modules. So, await is only valid in asynchronous functions. So, we have to go back. The function main, async. We declare main as an async function. Now, oh man, still doing the thing. Now that's pretty stable. Definitely doing the same thing each time. It's doing this one last every time for some reason. But you can see that it's a lot more stable anyway. So, that's how you key in these operations to execute in the same order. Make sense? Cool. Yeah, that's more or less it for async. I don't have any fancy diagrams for you, unfortunately. Okay. In the interest of rounding up a few sort of miscellaneous topics, I'd like to take a moment to sort of discuss JSON and sort of indicate how you navigate such things. So, what do you know about databases? It's a thing that a lot of people who learn programming themselves, it's not necessarily a topic that you touch. And there's not really a reason for normal people to have their own SQL server, right? You generally aren't using enough data to require one, right? Let alone writing your own queries and that sort of thing. So databases are dominated by two main technology groups. You have SQL databases, this is the majority, and it's the oldest. I believe SQL as a language dates back to the 1960s or 70s. Yet, it's been in use since that time in a more or less unchanged state. Because it does something well, and it's again the sort of Dvorak versus QWERTY keyboard problem, right? In recent years, no SQL databases have become reasonably popular. The most popular of these is one called MongoDB. You guys ever hear of Mongo? So if you think about SQL, right? SQL is in a lot of ways like an Excel spreadsheet, right? It kind of thinks of itself as a spreadsheet in the back end. You think in terms of tables, you think in terms of rows and columns, right? I sometimes, somewhat jokingly, refer to it as rectangular data because all of the data occurs in rectangles, right? In the majority of cases, no SQL databases use JSON or something similar as the sort of underlying basis that the data is stored in, right? So what I'm about to show you is this, these are the skills that you need. The mental skill of navigating a JSON structure is very important, right? So I'm going to invent some data for you. Let's imagine we have a JSON structure called people. At the top level, this will be a list. Anyone care to guess? Come on, let's have a little fun.
32.
I'm older than 32, although that's very flattering.
35.
I'm older than 35. That's less flattering, but still slightly flattering.
38.
38 is correct. Give the man a cigar. Note, the children field of the object itself contains an array of strings, right? But hopefully you can kind of get a feel for how data gets organized this way, right? We can then create another name right? enough. We get the idea? So, a couple of particular points about JSON. One thing that JSON can't do, that you can do with object-oriented systems or SQL, this thing is just a string. It's not a pointer, right? In object-oriented programming, in Java, our tendency would be to make this a thing that points to this object, right? This would be association. In SQL, we would give every person an ID number. We would not use strings here, we would use ID numbers instead, right? And then we would cross-reference tables in order to look things up. Actually, that's not even true. In SQL, what you would do is you would have a separate table containing the cross-references. So if I was 1, Felix was 2, Didi was 3, and Theo was 4, you would have a table, parent, child, that you would populate with 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. And you would cross-reference the ID numbers against a person table in order to actually sort of populate and flesh out the data. That's how things are thought of in SQL, right? But in JSON, everything is just literals, right? So we can't do any fun, nice things like linking the data that way. If you want, like, the data ends up being like put down multiple times in some cases, and you know, like there's nothing to say you couldn't encode this in a JSON structure, but it's kind of like you'd be trying to take your JSON and force it to behave like SQL in order to do so, right? So, all right, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay. So let's play a game. If I were to write an expression to get this piece of data out of this structure, how would I write it? Write an expression to get that piece of data. We certainly would start with people, then what do we do? How do we access? Yes?
Index 1.
People at index 1. Next. What is this? If this is an object, what is this?
Function?
It's not a function. Classes contain variables and
Element?
it's an element. Attribute, yes. If this were Java, it would be an instance of variable. How do we access things out of objects? No, we don't have any methods. What symbol do we use?
Dot.
Dot is correct. Dot, age. And that pulls that data. Does that make sense? Another way that you can do this in JavaScript, in a few other languages too, like PHP, the following syntax is equivalent. you can provide a string inside of square braces. In JavaScript, this is the same as using dot notation. This has a couple of advantages. This one's a bit more flexible than this one. There are some cases this won't handle. For example, content dash type cannot use dot syntax because JavaScript will think that the dash is subtraction. Right? Yes.
How do you get around that then?
Put it in quotes and do it this way. Yes.
So quotes is proper syntax for both JavaScript and SQL?
SQL is so different that it's best left to your third semester course.
But both of these are good for JavaScript.
This is all JavaScript. Yeah. SQL does not access data this way. This is the way that you would access. Okay. Oh man, if this were okay. Select age from people where name is equal to Felix. That's how you do it in SQL. So it's like completely different. You don't have, SQL is not on the exam here, but you will be taking more than your fill of SQL when you take database theory in the fall. Yes?
So, to summarize, so I can better understand it, parent is like the first number, then if it's in a list, like the child is a list, then it uses numbers again.
So all of this is SQL, not JSON. Alright? So this is kind of like if you're interested in how things are going to work in third semester, that's this. Alright? This is the way things work in JavaScript, and JavaScript is what your exam is on. So yeah, basically to access something out of an object, you require either dot notation or to provide the string as if it were a number in regular list access. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. So let's try another little game. How would I access the second of my children? What do I put here?
1.
0. Remember, 0 indexing. So this is object 0, this is object 1. What's next?
Dot.
Dot. Dot children. At index 1. There you go. And that pulls that information right there. Does that make sense? You guys feel like you got the idea? So you'll have to do a certain amount of this. You'll have to do a certain amount of this for assignment 5. In terms of practical considerations, you should be comfortable doing this for a JSON structure which is nested arbitrarily deeply. Also, here's another question. If I wanted the second person in the list of people as an object, how would I access that? So if I wanted to get that whole thing, People at index 1, yes. People at index 1. So the important point that I'm trying to make here is you don't have to follow it all the way down to a literal, right? You don't have to break through all data structures. You can return a data structure by just not following through to the final access. Does that make sense? Yeah. Thumbs up? Question?
It's more about the code that you had up earlier. I don't know if you still have it open, but it was for the post method. You did one name and text. Seeing as we're gonna have multiple, do we use a for loop to to change out the name for each element? Then we name equals blank, or is it just like we do it individual?
So don't confuse input and output. The string that I assigned to the body field, that is our input to the server. Our output from the server will be often a completely different form of JSON. In this case, I just set something up simply and quickly with the server to just echo back to us what we sent to it, right? So it's just it's bouncing off the server and right back to us. But in the case of your assignment, you're sending choice is equal to Mario, and then you get something like that, right? Yes, you will certainly be looping over all of the things that the server returns to you. In a fashion somewhat similar to the example that we did with the for loop.
And all this will be posted for today?
Yeah, I can post the code if you like.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Any questions? Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Is there anything else you need to know for the assignments? No. Let's see. Well, there are 12 minutes left in class. You want me to do jQuery in 12 minutes? No? Everybody just wants to go home? Yeah, I suppose that's fair. We have therefore reached the end of this course, as it is thus given. I hope that you have found it useful. I hope you will find it useful in the future. Next week is review. Thank you, and good day.
Sir?
Yes.
Do you know our exam date, or?
Yeah, it's Friday at 9 a.m. I posted an